The little boy could barely hold it in. His legs were twitching uncontrollably. He bit down hard on his pencil, trying to make it until the end of class. But in the end, he just couldn't hold it. A strange noise made the whole class burst into laughter. All eyes turned to the boy. Even the teacher thought he was deliberately causing trouble. In anger, the teacher called him to the front and scolded him harshly. The boy explained that he couldn't control the strange noise. The teacher didn't believe him and forced him to apologize to the class.
I'm sorry, that you can't study because of me.
The teacher then asked him to promise that he would never make such strange noises in class again. Reluctantly, the boy agreed.
Promise I won't make any more silly noises ever again.
However, just as he returned to his seat, no one knew that the boy was suffering from a rare illness. The confused teacher immediately called his parents. For the boy, this situation was all too familiar. Since he started school, he had been bullied by his classmates and faced their scorn and discrimination. Everyone treated him like a monster. However, this time, no matter how much his mother apologized, the school decided to expel him. After all, this wasn't the first incident. Although his mother knew it wasn't his fault, she resolutely took him home in the face of the principal's sarcasm and ridicule. In order to find out the cause of her son Brad's illness, the mother visited countless doctors and read numerous books. Fortunately, her efforts paid off, and she finally found the answer in a book. It turned out that her son had Tourette's syndrome. His brain was constantly sending incorrect signals, causing his body to exhibit involuntary behaviors. However, during that era, there was no cure for this strange disease anywhere in the world. Upon hearing this, the mother broke down in tears, feeling as if the sky had fallen. Brad quickly stepped forward to comfort.
We'll get through this, all right?
His understanding brought genuine comfort to his mother. Shortly after, she wanted to try a new treatment for Brad. After extensive searching, she found a support group for people with Tourette's syndrome. The symptoms of everyone there were varied and bizarre, with some even unable to take care of themselves. Strangely, they all shared a common trait. They complained about the unfairness of society. This negative attitude was something his mother couldn't agree with, so she decided that Brad should not receive treatment there. Brad wholeheartedly agreed and firmly told his mother,
These people let Tourette's win. I'm never gonna do that.
It's hard to imagine a 12-year-old child could say such words, which made his mother feel incredibly relieved. Her worried heart finally settled. Not long after, Brad went to another school, but the harsh reality remained unchanged. His classmates still treated him like a monster, and everyone saw him as a laughingstock. One day, the principal called Brad in for a talk. He expected criticism, but this time was different. Instead of reprimanding him, the principal invited him to a concert. Little did Brad know, the man in front of him would completely change his life. Brad tried his best to control himself from making strange noises, but it was all in vain. All the teachers and students present gave him strange looks, and some even nudged him with their elbows. It wasn't until the concert ended that Brad finally breathed a sigh of relief. But to his surprise, the principal called him up to the stage. Brad thought he was going up to apologize, but the principal had another purpose in mind.
Making noises and upsetting people, Brad?
No, sir.
Then why do you do it?
Well, because I have Tourette's syndrome.
What's that?
Brad explained in front of everyone that this condition is due to a problem in the brain, which causes these strange sounds that he cannot control. Moreover, there is no medication available to treat it. Not only do others dislike these sounds, but he himself finds them very annoying. After he finished speaking, everyone fell silent. The principal then asked,
What can we do to help you, Brad?
I just want to be treated like everybody else.
This is why the principal called him to the stage. When Brad stepped down, the entire school stood up and gave him a warm round of applause. The principal's words were like opening a window to a new world for Brad. It was the first time in his life that he felt understood and accepted. Brad looked at the principal with gratitude. From this moment on, he decided to become a good teacher for the people. Years later, Brad, armed with his college degree, began interviewing everywhere. But as soon as he made his strange noises, interviewers either frowned or mocked him. No matter where he went, he faced strange looks and discrimination. On good days, he would be politely rejected by interviewers. But on bad days, he would encounter people who would stubbornly focus on his condition, saying he was unfit to be a teacher and should just go home and be a shepherd. This was unbearable for Brad, and he ended up having a big argument with one such person and stormed out. But once he got back to his car, a wave of despair and frustration hit him. He pounded the steering wheel, venting his long-suppressed anger. At that moment, Brad seemed to start blaming the unfairness of life and finally broke down in tears. Despite all the setbacks, his dream of becoming a teacher remained undeterred. After calming down, he marked all the schools on a map and went for interviews one by one. As the marks on the map dwindled, Brad slowly sank into despair until a phone call brought him new hope. The other party was the principal of an elementary school who invited Brad for an interview. They talked for a long time, and the principal didn't care about his illness, only whether he could teach the children real knowledge. After several hours of discussion, the principal decided to give Brad a chance with a one-year term. If Brad performed well during this year, they would immediately sign a formal contract with him. Of course, if any problems arose during this period, they would also resolutely dismiss Brad. Faced with this rare opportunity, Brad had no reason to refuse. He made thorough preparations, from setting up the classroom to selecting various learning materials, each chosen with great care. Once everything was ready, Brad stood excitedly at the classroom door to welcome the children. His first lesson was to introduce his illness. As expected, the children's questions were quite varied, and a few mischievous kids even asked some sharp and harsh questions. However, Brad didn't get angry. He patiently explained each question to the children. Thus, the first class was successfully completed. After school, Brad saw a naughty chubby kid bullying a classmate. He quickly called them over and used rock, paper, scissors to successfully defuse the situation. This is the innocence children should have, fighting over a word and making peace through a game. But the school's teacher told Brad that the chubby kid was notorious for being a troublemaker. Besides poor academic performance, he had many issues, including severe attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. The teacher advised Brad to talk to the kid's parents and suggest they send him to a special education class. But Brad didn't think so. After all, he grew up in such an environment and understood the children's psychology well. Although the symptoms were different, there was no essential difference. He wouldn't give up on the chubby kid or any other child. To change the chubby kid, Brad planned to use his own experiences to influence him. For example, he didn't like reading because the noise would distract him. Brad had the chubby kid experience it by pretending he also had Tourette syndrome and then asked him to read. But after less than a minute, the chubby kid couldn't continue. At that moment, he realized how difficult it was for the teacher. Although reading was hard, it was nothing compared. From then on, the chubby kid started to read diligently. Thus, a child on the verge of failing was successfully brought back by Brad. Brad almost always mingled with the kids, and they liked him a lot, especially a little girl who was smart, cute, and the most obedient in the class. Every day after school, she would say goodbye to Brad alone.
Heather, I like your hair.
It's just short because of the medicine.
Only then did Brad realize the little girl was in the late stages of cancer, but she wasn't afraid. She continued to live her life with joy and sunshine every day. She told Brad that the last thing she wanted to see was her family hiding away to cry. She didn't want to be a burden to them. Seeing such a considerate child, tears kept welling up in Brad's eyes. But fate was unkind, and the little girl couldn't make it through the summer. At her funeral, Brad stood outside, hesitant to enter, fearing his unusual sounds might disturb others. However, the girl's mother thought differently. She believed Brad had brought joy to her daughter and changed her short life. The daughter liked this teacher very much, so the mother insisted he attend the funeral. As Brad walked in, tears streamed down his face. Despite the unusual sounds he made, no one laughed or looked down on him because everyone knew it was this teacher who brought the little girl her final moments of happiness. In the days that followed, Brad continued teaching as usual. He used his spare time to study graduate-level material and eventually earned his master's degree. Perhaps it was fate rewarding his hard work, as Brad finally met the woman of his dreams. She didn't mind the strange sounds he made and even considered them a gift from above. The two quickly fell in love. Meanwhile, Brad's one-year probation period at the school was coming to an end, and he was fortunate enough to be named Teacher of the Year. At the award ceremony, he confidently stood on stage to deliver his acceptance speech. Brad thanked many people, acknowledging that their love and support had made him who he was today, especially his family and colleagues, whose unwavering support had helped him remain strong and optimistic. Lastly, Brad thanked his old companion, Tourette syndrome. In a way, it was Tourette syndrome that made Brad who he is. Many might not understand this, but his students have provided the answer.
I mean, what could I possibly learn from a disability? Yes, Galen.
You learn to keep going.
Eli?
You learn not to let it stop you.
Yes, Thomas.
You learn not to let it win.
At this moment, everyone understands why Brad is grateful. The movie Front of the Class ends here. Although Tourette's syndrome brought him many troubles, it also taught him the most valuable lesson in life. It taught Brad to never give up, no matter what difficulties he faced. In fact, we should all learn from Brad. Even if the road ahead is not smooth, we should maintain a positive and optimistic attitude and move forward bravely.